A guide to reading Russian for chess players. Our first task is to familiarize ourselves with the Russian alphabet of 32 letters, or as the purists have it, 33 letters. Now, this is nothing like the difficulty that some people have alleged, and you should be able to master it after, say, a quarter of an hour a day for a week. First of all, listen to the names of the letters, as the name indicates the sound in most cases. A, B, V, G, D, Y, Yo, J, Z, E, short E. That's E with a half circle written above it for the Y sound. K, L, M, N, O, P, R, S, T, U, F, H, C, J, Sh, hard sign. I, soft sign. E, U, Ya. Now the complication over whether it is 32 or 33 letters is that the letter Y, looks like our E, when written with two dots above it, is pronounced Yo. Note that this gives us 10 vowels in pairs, 5 hard, 5 soft. E, Ye, O, Yo, that's the one E with two dots, U, You, A, Ya, I, E. If you look at the third line of the word recognition sheet, you will see Alyochin ili Alyechin. That is, how should the name of the great Russian world champion be pronounced? We put it Alekin, perhaps a bit baffled by his French spelling of it. He himself insisted on Alyechin, a sort of snobbish version, but nearly all Russians say Alyochin. For the benefit of foreigners, Russians would mark the two dots above the ye, but in the chess literature that you will be looking at, the dots are hardly ever marked. This is partly because yo doesn't count as a separate letter when looking up words in a dictionary. Once we are familiar with the alphabet and with the order of the letters, we shall be using our newly acquired knowledge to look words up in a dictionary. Some points to bear in mind. Remember that V and Z, our V and Z, come early in the Russian alphabet, while S, written like our C, comes late on, and F and E very late on. Now let us try the names on the word recognition sheet. They're mainly chess players' names, some historical personalities, some geography, some writers, and so on. First line. Karpov, Tal, Botvinnik, Spassky, Korchnoi, Smyslov. You'll notice from this that the Russian pronunciation of some names differs from the normal English way of saying it. The second line, Taimanov, Antoshin, Pologaevsky, Reshevsky, Evans. If you have a good ear, you will have noticed already that Russian words of more than one syllable have a strong stress on one syllable, and the other syllables are heard less clearly. This feature particularly affects the letter O, which is often heard as A or O. But remember, we have the same sort of thing in English. A convict, a man in prison, well, that's a little different from what the jury do to such a person. They convict him. Convict, convict. So it's not all that unusual. Third line. Alyochin или Alechin, Romanishin, Petrosyan, Grigorich. Going on. Bogolyubov, Lubayevich, Meking, Gort, Gitler, Gamburg. Now the last three are put in to show that the H sound is sometimes rendered by the letter G instead of the expected H. So we have the Czech grandmaster called Gort, although the Russian grandmaster is Holmov. Now for some English names, because you will come across those in your Russian chess magazines. Penrose, Keen, Miles, Hartston, Mestel, Nunn, Whiteley. Now, the last two in particular show that the Russians just have as much difficulty over our names as is the case the other way round. Let's carry on with some more names. Fischer, Capablanca, Lasker, Stenitz, Zuckertort, Marozzi, Tarash, Chigorin, Chekhov, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Pushkin, Turgenev, Solzhenitsyn, Portish, Sabo, Stalin, Brezhnev, Khrushchev, Kosygin, Lenin, Dubček, Trotsky, Marx, Engels. Well, I hope you recognized all those names. Now let's try немного географии. Geografia, geography. SSSR, Anglia, Italia, Hispania, Germania. Well, pretty self-evident. Second line. Francia, Россия, Кипр, Chile, Китай, США, America. Well, that's a little more difficult. France, Russia, Cyprus, Chile, China, and the United States of America, USA. США is the USA. Leningrad, Kiev, Odessa, Moskva, Minsk, Manchester, Glasgow, Cardiff, Leeds, Southampton, Gastings. Now that's a traditional spelling. It will be much more logical to spell it with K, the diagonal cross at the beginning, and follow it up with ye or e, and then the short e to make a diphthong. Hastings, as written between the two oblique lines. But tradition outweighs that, and in fact it's written Gastings. Next line, Bournemouth, Plymouth. Well, I think these examples from the South Coast towns show you that the Russians again have some great difficulty in transliterating some of our names and some of our sounds. Moreover, there's no th sound in Russian. So what's the British or English man in the street called? Mr. Smith? Or is that Mr. Smith? And what's his equivalent in the Soviet Union? Well, Tavarish Ivan Ivanovich Ivanov. John, son of John Johnson. or Jones, or something very common like that. Now, the main difficulty in mastering the reading of Russian is the extensive vocabulary, the large number of words whose meaning we cannot guess, but have to look up in a dictionary and try and learn off by heart. However, there are some international words which form the next three lines of the sheet. Park, tank, bank, balalaika, vodka, whisky, gin, vino, morje. Well, I think the Latin or Romance scholars in particular will have recognized the last two words as wine and sea. Baltiskaye morje, the Baltic Sea. Analyz, атака, блокада, вертикаль, гамбит, debut, начало. Well, debut is pretty clearly a word of French origin, début, whereas начало is a genuine Russian word meaning beginning or start. Диагональ, контроль, мат, матч, шанс, шах, étude. Let's have a look at that third line again. Diagonal, control, mate, match, chance, in the sense that he has good chances, and so on. And the next word can mean the Shah of Persia, for example, or it's the word check, and it's from that we get the name of the game chess in Russian, shachmaty. And the last word again is of French origin, étude, something you can play on the piano, or a composed endgame study. Now for the names of the pieces, the bits of wood that we move about the board. First of all, the most numerous element, the pawn, pieszka. And that can appear in various forms, such as pieszki, pieszkaj, pieszku, pieszek, pieszkach, pieszkami. Now, we don't want to go into the intricacies of the grammar. Just take two examples. You might meet the words, or two words forming a phrase, sila pieszek. Look at the first word in the dictionary, you'll find it means strength or force, and so you have to guess that it is the strength of pawns. Sila pieszek, the strength of pawns. Similar, the other names of the pieces can also appear in slightly different forms, the ending changing to indicate their function in the sentence. So, king, король, queen, ферзь. Dama, no это старомодно. Well, it used to be called dama or lady, but that's old-fashioned. Bishop, slon, actually means elephant. Knight, конь. Now, that's not the normal word for a horse. It's a rather high-flown word meaning steed or charger, something that a knight of chivalry would be riding upon. Rook is ladya, an old Slavonic word for boat. And the whole collection, daska I figury, the board and the pieces. Now, one of the bits of intelligent guesswork that you have to apply to make progress in reading Russian is to spot the key element or the root of a word. Now, let's take this example. The word for one, you'll find in the dictionary, is adin, but it appears in different forms. Adna, adno, adni, adnimi, adnish, adnamu, and so on. And I think you'll realize from that that the root of it is the three letters O, D, N. So whenever you see something like that in a word, you can guess it's got something to do with single, or only, or unity. Now, that sort of spotting of the roots can help in general word building. Let's take some more examples. Taktik is a tactician. Taktika is tactics. But again, because of this Russian grammatical practice of changing the ending of words to indicate the function in the sentence, taktika could also be the accusative or genitive case of taktik. So it could be of a tactician, or it could be the accusative case suffering the action of the verb. It could be he sees the tactician. In that case, the word for tactician would have to be taktika. Now the adjective tactical, taktический, similar but a slight change and lengthened. Another example, sport, well, that's an international word. The adjective спортивный, meaning sporting or competitive, something like that. Now, finally, on the word recognition sheet, we come to the names of the openings. Just listen to them and try and work out their meanings. Шотландский гамбит. Дебют слона. Славянская защита. Well, Scotch gambit, opening of the bishop, opening of the elephant, the bishop's opening, and the Slav defense. Next line. Сицилианская защита. Защита Петрова. Русская партия. Sicilian defense. Petrov's defense, or often called the Russian game on the continent. The next line. Венская партия. Ферзовый гамбит. Каталонское начало. Well, Vienna is Vienna. So, Vienna game, Queen's gambit, Catalan opening. Дебют Рети. Дебют Берда. Английское начало. Защита Немцовича. Well, Reti's opening, Bird's opening, the English opening, and the Nimzovich defense. Finally, the last line for the names of the openings. Голландская защита. Новоиндийская защита. Дебют Вересова. Well, the first one is the G used for our H again. So Голландский, Голландская is in fact from Holland, yes, Dutch, Dutch defense. Now, if you're pretty good with your dictionary and spotting roots, you might work out that the next means New Indian defense. Well, that's what it literally means. That is their name for the Queen's Indian defense. The King's Indian defense, of course, is called Staraindiskaya, Old Indian defense. And finally, the opening of Veresov, Veresov's opening, which of course many Western theoreticians say shouldn't be called Veresov's opening at all, but should be the Richter opening. Right. Now on to the next stage. Once we have got a dictionary and become proficient in looking words up speedily, it's time to apply this knowledge by turning to the sample sentences sheet. As already indicated, the reader of Russian has to apply intelligent guesswork. This applies particularly to the fact that there are no words for the or the articles in Russian, and the verbs to be, the verb to have, are not normally used in the present tense. So sentences, when they're translated literally, have the nature, so it might seem, of pidgin English. And we see that on the fifth line of the sample sentences sheet, where if we translate it, it comes out as, well, first of all, Karpov пишет ход. Таль читает журнал. Шахматы – хорошая игра. Well, if we translate those with the aid of our dictionary, we'll find it's Karpov writes move. Tal reads magazine. Chess, good game. Well, there's the pidgin English element. Clearly we have to transpose this into Karpov is writing his move, Tal is reading a magazine or the magazine, chess is a good game. So that's where the intelligent guesswork is needed. Now let's start looking at some of the technical terms at the very top of the sample sentences sheet. Nichia, literally nobody's. Nichia partia, nobody's game. Well, that's the word for a draw. Two words for win, one more stylish or eloquent than the other. Выигрыш, победа, win, and the second perhaps victory. Now for loss, проигрыш, поражение, loss, defeat. Now the next line, белые, черные. Now notice that they are in fact plural. They are short for белые фигуры, the white pieces, черные фигуры, the black pieces. And notice that the черные is a case of your being written as if it was just ye. The two dots have been missed out. That is the Russian practice in the magazines. Center доски, the center of the board. Just those two words. Doski, coming from daska. Doski, the changed ending indicates possession or genitive of board, center of board. The opposite of that, flank. Flank, of course, or wing. Записанный ход, written down move or sealed move. Конверт, envelope. Судья, arbiter, judge, arbiter, games controller, and so on. Now some rather longer words. Russian has got quite a lot of long words. Доигрывание, a German session. It's literally playing on or playing to finish. Доигрывание, the German session. Чемпионат, we recognize that as an international word, championship, and the Russian form of it, which means more like coming first or supremacy. Первенство. Чемпионат, первенство. Now let's move on to full sentences. Now we have to mention a little grammar, and after the first three sentences, which we dealt with just before now, we come to some verbs in the past tense. Он записал плохой ход. He wrote down, or he sealed, a bad move. Белые сдались, черные выиграли. White resigned, black lost. Now, if you analyze that carefully, you'll see that the sign of the past tense in Russian is the ul, the L. But this is sometimes hidden by the fact that if it's in the plural, there's a vowel after the L, and if it's reflexive, a reflexive verb, then it will end in s, soft S, or sia. So, белые сдались is actually white gave themselves up, surrendered, and so on. That's the word for white resigned. So look for the L close to the end of a word. It may well be the sign of the past tense. Well, let's push on with some more longer sentences. Спасский отдал коня за 2 пешки. Spassky gave up a knight for 2 pawns. Spassky gave up a knight for 2 pawns. Конь, the knight, has been changed in form slightly. Коня, to indicate that it's suffering the action of the verb gave up. Советская команда победила на Олимпиаде. The Soviet team won, or triumphed, or were victorious at the Olympiad. Она предложила ничью, но партнер, противник, ответил нет. Well, I think most of us will recognize that final word without having to look it up in the dictionary. It's the word for no. And there is a past tense indicated in the second word, la, the L, but it's got a after it to indicate that it's a woman, it's feminine. She proposed a draw, but the opponent looks like the word for partner. And an alternative word for partner or opponent is противник. Партнер or противник, much the same thing. Answered, yes, there's another past tense with the L at the end, answered no. So it's she proposed the draw, but the opponent or her opponent said or replied no. Now the word нет also means there is not of, indicating absence of something. You see that in the next sentence? У черных нет компенсации за качество. And this is the structure to indicate the verb to have. Literally, by black, or in the possession of black, there is not of compensation for exchange. Yes, that's the pidgin English again, which we have to transpose into black has no compensation for the exchange. Now, the keen student, I'm sure, is still looking words up in his dictionary, tiring and annoying though that process may be. Of course, an alternative approach is to listen again and again and to try and assimilate the sentences. I must admit that if you are an assiduous looker-up in dictionaries, but you don't know Russian grammar, there are still many snags, which we see in the next sentence. Взяв пешку, черные стоят хорошо. Well, you'll find взять as the infinitive of the verb to take or capture. Взяв, the changed ending, you just have to guess. And it is in fact the past gerund, having taken. So the sentence means, having captured the pawn, black stands well. Now, хорошо. Хорошо is another word which you may have heard before. It's a one-word sentence in itself, meaning it's fine, or okay, or it's good. And grammarians indicate that in Russian there are a lot of these one-word sentences. Лучше, better. Хуже, worse. They're words which occur very frequently in chess texts. You see it in the next sentence? Лучше играть в центре, чем на флангах. It's better to play in the center than on the flanks. The single word лучше by itself indicating not just better, but it is better, according to the context. Все владения эндшпили ничение. All rook endgames are drawn. And the third word I think you'll recognize as coming from the German, Endspiel, endgame. Now let's try some even harder examples. A long sentence coming up here. После острого Mittelspiele партия отложена с преимуществом у Спасского. И белые сдались, не приступая к доигрыванию. Well, don't complain that Ostrova and Spaskova have been pronounced wrongly, with the G pronounced as V. That's one of the little quirks of Russian pronunciation. Well, looking the words up, we work it out as, after a sharp middle game, the game is adjourned with advantage to Spassky, and white resigned without coming to the adjournment session, or without playing on. Next sentence. Шла ожесточенная борьба, и после взаимных ошибок. Партия закончилась в ничью. Now, the first word is one which will baffle you a great deal unless you have a very good dictionary. Because it is in fact an irregular past tense, you might have guessed that from the presence of the "o" in it, it's the irregular past tense from a verb which looks completely different, idti, to be going, or to be walking. So we have to work this out as, there was going on a bitter struggle, or there went on a bitter struggle, or there was a bitter struggle. And after mutual mistakes, the game ended in a draw. Nichia we had at the top. Notice it's got the in, tacked on the beginnings, all spelled as one word. Vnichiu, in a draw. Now, perhaps I should say something a little more about dictionaries. It doesn't do to get a dictionary that's too large, where you have to flick through 100 pages before you come to the right page to find the word you're looking for. The smaller ones are better. Even the Pocket Collins or Langenscheidt will be quite suitable for you. But it's best of all to try and get a dictionary in which these irregular word forms, such as the fact that shol, shla, shlo, is the past tense from the verb et, to be going, where these irregularities are marked. And I must say that not many dictionaries do mark it. One in particular that I do know and quite like is Russian English Dictionary for Beginners by Lapidus and Shevtsova, which has been brought out in a paperback reprint by MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That's a very fine dictionary and not at all expensive. Now we go on to the next sentence, which looks a bit simpler than the longer ones we've been doing, but still is rather tricky. Botvinnik съел слона. Now, there are sentences in every language where you can work out the meaning of every single word separately, know what it means, and yet the general sense escapes you. This is because it's a figurative use, which the native will recognize instantly, will use as a matter of second nature, which to the foreigner is rather baffling. This one looks like Botvinnik ate, or ate up, the elephant. And you have to think rather carefully to realize that it's a colloquial way of saying snatched off or gobbled up something that had been left en prise. Botvinnik gobbled up the bishop. Botvinnik snatched the bishop off. That reminds me that when I was learning Russian in the late 50s, I came across a cartoon in a Russian chess magazine that I found very baffling. A young lad was being carried on his father's shoulders past a zoo, and looking out saw a huge elephant at play, and so said to his father something like, "Oh, Papa, how could it be that Botvinnik could eat up an elephant?" This being a phrase that the young lad had read in a sports report somewhere. And of course there's the explanation. Slon, literally elephant, is the Russian word for chess bishop, and there's this colloquial phrase, to eat up, which means to snatch off, to grab it quick. Now let's take some more sentences. Вот шахматисты. Они играют в шахматы в парке. Here are the chess players. They are playing chess. They are playing at chess in the park. I think we'll have recognized the verb играть, to play, from the previous examples. This occurs again in the next sentence in a slightly different form, in the form of the reflexive verb. Турнир претендентов играется в два круга. I think we recognize the second word pretendent as challenger, pretender. So the challengers tournament, the tournament of the challengers, is being played, a reflexive verb to indicate the passive voice, is being played in 2 rounds. Now, another point about Russian is the flexibility of the word order. In English, man bites dog and dog bites man certainly are two very different things. But in Russian, where the ending of the word indicates whether it's the person doing the action or the person suffering the effects of the action, you could have the words in a different order and the sense would remain the same, not the same as in English. So here we see in the next sentence the verb to be playing coming as the very first word, and that has a certain significance which I'd like you to try and guess at. Играют в шахматном клубе каждый день. Now literally, they play in the chess club every day. But the absence of the word for they, just the ending at the end to indicate that it is the third person plural, means it's a sort of impersonal usage. And that might be translated better, in view of this unusual word order, as play takes place in the chess club every day. Well, I hope you take the point about word order. Now let's finish off the sentences on the sheet. Таль жертвует пешку, но не всегда успешно. Tal sacrifices a pawn, but not always successfully. Журнал рекомендует ход ферзем, но это ошибка. Ввиду the magazine recommends a move with the queen, or the queen move. But this is a mistake in view of ... such and such a continuation. Висячие пешки часто являются слабостью. Hanging pawns often are a weakness. And the verb there, являются, if you look it up in the dictionary, you'll find that it's something like appears to be, but it's often a substitute for this missing verb to be, so just is in this case, or are. Hanging pawns often are a weakness. Now, as I say, we don't want to go into the intricacies of grammar, so I'm not going to go into the great terrors of the aspects of the verbs in Russian. But after a little while, when you look words up in the dictionary and find that there are two forms very often for the same verb, you'll begin to wonder what it's all about. Just a quick example in the last sentence on the sheet. Белые выиграли. Черные выигрывали путем. So and so. Now, the first verb, выиграть, is the perfective verb, to win. The idea being the completion of an action, it being over. So it's just white, won. Now, the lengthened form of it, выигрывать, is the so-called imperfective form of that verb, which lays more stress on the process and doesn't necessarily indicate that the action was taken to its conclusion or that the action actually happened. So here, the slight finesse is black could have won, black would have won, black would win by means of ... such and such a continuation. So you have to bear in mind that point, but I don't want to go into it in really great detail at the moment. Now, just a final word of encouragement. Perhaps we should draw breath at this point and consider the experience which many language teachers have reported in the past with regard to the question of what are difficult and what are easy languages. Experience has shown that certain languages, say Spanish for English beginners, especially if they've learnt French or know a bit of Latin, Spanish seems to English beginners not too difficult a language. Much that they encounter is familiar or can be guessed, but you'll find that the more you go into Spanish, the more extra difficulties you seem to meet with. Now, with Russian, it's just the other way around. All the difficulties come crowding in on you straight away. A new alphabet, unusual sounds, many words whose meaning you can't guess at all, even from the context. Now, as a result of all this, language teachers tend to think that you need some 18 months to 2 years to get over the strangeness of Russian. But I'd better point out to you that you have the consolation that no new complications are going to be encountered, and that after the 2 years or so that it takes you to assimilate it, it will all seem pretty regular and straightforward to you. Unfortunately, as we've said, the beginner faces a daunting task. Well, just plough on, and just as if you were faced with a difficult position at the board, keep on trying to master the complications. As you go more deeply into it, it will gradually seem easier to you. A Guide to Reading Russian for Chess Players, Part 2. Once we've mastered the points about looking up in a dictionary and gone through the sample sentences various times to fix some of the elementary vocabulary in our minds, then we're ready to push on to more advanced studies by going through a whole game taken from the Russian magazine Shakhmaty BSSR. I think you'll be able to work out now as chess in the USSR. Now look at the photocopy of it. It's headed on the top left by a huge heading, Party. Well, we've met Partia before as game, so I think we'll see the slight change indicates games. Now we come to a few lines written in a slightly different typeface. Italic, one might say, and that is the form which is much closer to handwriting. And it says, Partii комментируют гроссмейстеры Балашов, Суетин, Холмов, мастера Лепешкин, Письменный, Соколов, Hasin. And I think we'll be able to work that out as the games are commented, or the following people give notes to the games: Grandmasters Balashov, Suetin, and Holmov, Masters Lepeshkin, Pismeny, Sokolov, and Hasin. And before we come to the game, we have a news item complete with a bit of geography and some numerals to indicate points scored. Let's go through that first. Международный турнир в Скопье, Югославия, завершился победой чемпиона мира Анатолия Карпова с результатом 12.5 очков из 15. Победитель провел соревнование без поражений. Далее были В. Ульман, ГДР, 11, Я. Тиман, Голландия, 10.5, Б. Кураица, Д. Тардьян, США, по 9, Д. Велимирович, 8.5, А. Адорьян, Венгрия, 8, Б. Ивков, А. Матанович, по 7.5, Р. Ваганян, СССР, 7, Р. Ничевский и Сафревский, по 6, С. Ришевский, США, D. Ivanovich, po 5.5. V. Georgievsky, 3.5. L. Yanchev, 3 achka. Now, we're not going to teach you the numerals, so we've left those in English, which is the way you'll presumably think about them when you're looking through Russian chess texts. Now, let's see what that means. The international tournament in Skopje, Yugoslavia, finished with the victory. That's just the one word, but the ending of it indicates by the victory, with the victory, in the victory, of the champion of the world, A. Karpov, with a result 12.5 points from 15. The winner, or the victor, went through the event without defeat. And then the long string of names of these players and the points that they scored. Then came V. Ullmann, German Democratic Republic, Jan Timman, Holland, Kuraitze, Tarjan, USA, Velimirovic, Adorian, Hungary, Ivkov, Matanovic, Vaganyan, USSR, Nichevsky, Sofrevsky, Rishevsky, USA, and so on, down to the final man, Yanchev, 3 points. Now notice that the word po in front of the number is a distributive, meaning each. Right, now we come to the heading for the game, which is always written in the standard form, starting with the opening and then the names of the players. Французская защита E03 stroke small b. Well, that's the classification under the informata scheme worked out by Rabar. Французская защита, French defense. And the names of the players: A. Karpov, R. Vaganyan. Well, that's Karpov against Vaganyan. Примечание A. Khasina. Well, notes by Khasin. Right. Before I go through the actual moves, just let me comment that unfortunately the Russians have picked up this bad habit from informata of missing out the plus sign for check, and that's a little confusing. But they've been doing it for some years now and seem to not be prepared to go back to the good old system of marking check. Right, get your board ready, but you may wish, in view of the complexity of studying the chess and the Russian at the same time, you may wish to follow Nimzovic's suggestion of having two boards, one in which you keep the main moves of the game and the other one in which you move the pieces around for long variations. However, that's up to you. So we start. 1, E4, E6. Well, that's the confirmation of the French defense. White plays D4. Black replies D5. White's third move, knight to D2. Black C5. White's fourth, ED. He takes D5, that is. ED in reply by black. White's fifth move, knight G to F3. And we come to the first note. Мне кажется, что 5, bishop B5, доставляет черным больше неприятностей. Well, the word мне you'll find if you have a good dictionary, but not all of them will mark it because it's an oblique case of the word я, I. It is in fact the dative to me. To me, it seems that 5, bishop b5, would provide for black greater or more, and then this last word, where the intelligent guesswork has got to be applied again. Не, at the beginning you perhaps recognize as the sign of the negative. Приятно you'll find in the dictionary as pleasant. So the combination of the two means unpleasantness. It seems to me that 5 bishop b5 would cause black more unpleasantness. Black's fifth move, A6. And now longer note. Ход в тексте, изобретенный Ботвинником в 40-х годах, не только лишает белых возможности выпада на B5, но и подготавливает при случае продвижение C5 to C4. The move in the text, invented by Botvinnik in the 40th years, in the 40s, not only deprives white of the possibility of a thrust to B5, well, that's a way of saying you can't say put the bishop or the knight, a minor piece on B5, but, now it looks like but that would be more pleasantly said, but also prepares, now the next word, при случае, if appropriate, if opportunity offers, and so on. Prepares, if appropriate, the advance C5 to C4. White's sixth move, D takes C, D takes C5. And then an even longer note with some names in and a little geography. Теория рассматривает также ходы 6b3 и 6 bishop e2, которые ведут к равенству. Не привела к успеху попытка наказать черных за пренебрежение к развитию фигур в партии Росолимо-Корчной в конце 1968, в которой последовало 6 c4, black replies knight f6, 7 bishop to e2, black plays knight to c6, 8 castles, c takes d. White's ninth move, c takes d, and now we have a bracket comment. Вероятно, сильнее 9 knight to b3, close bracket. Black's ninth move, knight takes d5. White plays 10, knight b3. Black replies bishop e7. White, knight f takes d4. Black castles. The end of the note. Now that means theory examines also the moves 6 b3 and 6 bishop to e2, which lead to equality. Did not lead to success. Well, here we have a case of this different Russian word order. The subject is in fact the next word, попытка. The attempt to punish black for neglect in his development of pieces. Now back to the very beginning, не привела, did not lead to success. Now we have to jump again. In the game, Rossolimo against Korchnoi, Vaikanze, 1968, in which there came, then that sequence of moves, and in the bracket it says, probably stronger, and you have to supply the word was, and then the rest of the variation. Notice the point about the word order. I've often been criticized myself, and all translators have this problem, that they begin sentences with unnatural word orders in English. Stronger was bishop to e2, for example. Well, the natural word order in English, of course, is bishop to e2 was stronger. The influence of the Russian style tends to shut out one's feeling for English. Mea culpa. Sixth move for black. Bishop takes c5. And the note. Выясняется, что черные не потеряли темпа ходом 5a6, так как обычно их слон попадает на c5 в два приема, пересадкой на d6. It transpires that black has not lost a tempo by the move 5a6, since normally his bishop gets to c5 in 2 goes, with a stop on d6, or with a transfer on d6. Notice that we said before the words for white and black were in the plural. So the word for his bishop in Russian literally is their bishop. Ich slon, ich of them, or theirs the possession, possessive there. White's 7th move is knight to b3, black bishop b6, exclamation mark. With the comment, сильнее, чем трафаретное 7, bishop a7. Stronger than, and then this adjective, even if you find it in the dictionary, you'll find it a little hard to work out. Trafaret means copy or stencil, and by extension it's come to mean, in the adjective form, stereotyped or common. So, stronger than the commonly played 7, bishop a7. White's 8th move, bishop to d3. Black plays knight to e7. Этот естественный ход выпал из поля зрения теоретиков. Возможно, потому что черным нелегко будет рокировать из-за слабости пункта h7. Чаще играют 8, queen e7. Например, 9, bishop e2. Black replies knight f6. 10, white castles, and black castles. 11, knight f to d4, knight c6. White's 12th move, rook e1, knight to e4. 13, bishop to e3, knight e5, exclamation mark. White's 14th move, knight d2, f5, exclamation mark. Чирич Корчной, Будва, 1968. В этой партии слон стоял на a7. Well, we have a bit of gobbledygook here. We have to comment that some Russian writers love high-flown phrases, and the sentence literally means, this natural move fell out of the field of vision of theoreticians. Of course, fell out of the vision, the field of vision of theoreticians. You could just quite simply put missed, and it would make much better sense and not be so difficult for you. This natural move was missed by theoreticians, possibly because it will not be easy for black to castle because of the weakness of the point h7. More frequently is played 8, queen to e7. For example, then he gives the game continuation that we've been through, which is Chirich Korchnoi, Budva 1968. In this game, the bishop was standing at a7. Now the game continues. 9, white castles. Black knight b to c6. White plays rook e1, and black bishop to g4. White c3. h6. White's 12th move, h3. Bishop to h5. 13 for white, bishop to e3. Black castles, and white plays bishop takes b6. And before the note we have a photograph of Karpov looking sideways with a clock in the foreground, and a flag on the right-hand side, from which I assume the photograph was taken at an Olympiad, and that the flag is the national flag of the USSR, the hammer and sickle. Now for the note. Карпов последовательно осуществляет размен слонов, не раз приводивший его к успеху в подобных позициях. После 14 Queen E2 у черных был выбор между 14 Bishop takes F3, White replies Queen takes F3, Knight to E5, и 14 Bishop C7. Плохо 14 Knight E5 question mark. 15 Bishop takes B6, Knight takes F3. Check, no check marked in the text notice. 16 Queen takes F3 exclamation mark. И белые остаются с лишней фигурой. Karpov consistently carries out the exchange of bishops. So more gobbledygook. Not one time leading him to success in such positions. Well, that's the pidgin English which we have to transpose in our minds to. Karpov consistently carries out the exchange of bishops, which more than once has worked in his favor or led to his success in similar positions, in such positions. After 14 Queen E2, Black had a choice between that variation and the 14 Bishop to C7. And the first word of the next sentence is this common word bad, or it is bad. 14 Knight to E5 would be bad because of 15 Bishop takes B6, Knight takes F3 check, 16 for White, Queen recaptures on F3 exclamation mark, and White remains with an extra piece. White remains a piece up. In the game, Black's 14th move was to recapture, Queen takes on B6. And we come to the first diagram, after which there is a note. Теперь видно преимущество маневра 7 Bishop to B6 перед 7 Bishop to A7. Черные с темпом вывели ферзя на хорошую позицию. Now is apparent the advantage of the maneuver 7 Bishop to B6 instead of 7 Bishop to A7. Black, with tempo, has brought out his queen to a good position. In the game, White's 15th move was Queen to E2. And Black replied Rook F to D8. Now a very long and complicated note with the moves mixed in very much with the prose. Предпочтительнее 15 Rook A D8. Например, 16 Rook A D1. Black replies Knight G6. 17 Queen E3. And now a bracket. Или 17 Bishop takes G6. Bishop takes G6. С равенством. Нехорошо 17 G4 question mark. Knight to F4. И т.д. Well, и так далее. That has to be read as. Close brackets. Black's 17th move in the variation. Queen takes E3 exclamation mark. And another bracket. К проигрышу ведет 17 D4 question mark exclamation mark. 18 C takes D. Bishop takes F3. White's 19th Queen takes F3. Knight takes D4 question mark. 20 Queen to E3. И так далее. Close the bracket. 18 Rook takes E3. Black replies D4. Yet another subvariation in brackets. Возможно 18 Bishop takes F3. White replies 19 Rook takes F3. Knight G to E5. White 20, rook e3, knight to c4. Or, или, 18, knight g to e5, 19, bishop to e2, knight to c4, exclamation mark. И при других продолжениях черные удерживают позицию благодаря различным тактическим возможностям. Close bracket. White's 19th move in the variation, c takes d, open brackets, плохо, 19, bishop takes g6, question mark, and so on, close the brackets. Black's 19th move, bishop takes f3, white replies, rook takes f3, black, knight takes d4, white's 21st move, knight takes d4, black plays rook takes d4, 22, bishop to c2, rook f d8. И вряд ли белым удастся реализовать их небольшой позиционный перерез. Well, cheer up, that's the most difficult part of the whole game. Back to the beginning. Предпочтительнее. Is preferable. Preferable is peculiar word order again. 15, rook a to d8. For example. And in the brackets it says, or 17, bishop takes g6. Black replies, bishop takes g6 with equality. Not good is the move 17, g4 for white. And then we get e to the common abbreviation, and so on, or and so forth. The next bracket, к проигрышу, to a loss leads that line of play. Again ending in the itd, and so on. The next bracket begins with the word возможно, which means possible, or it is possible. And after the moves white 19, bishop to e2, met by black's knight to c4, exclamation mark, you get the comment. Also, with other continuations, black would maintain the position thanks to various tactical possibilities. Then a long series again. Oh, sorry, in the bracket there's the word плохо again, it is bad. And then 3 lines of variation. And after 22, bishop to c2, met by black's rook f to d8, there's the final comment. And hardly would it be possible, or would white succeed in realizing his slight, literally not big, his slight positional advantage. White's 16th move in the game is rook a to d1, and black replies a5. Все еще возможно было 16, knight g6. 16, knight g6 was still possible. White's 17th move, bishop to b1, exclamation mark. And black replies, bishop takes f3. Не проходило 17, a4 for black. And then this variation, ending in 20, queen takes f3, black, queen takes b2, question mark. Ввиду 21, rook b4. So this means would not work. This particular variation would not work, ввиду, in view of, the final answer 21, rook b4. White's 18th move in the game, queen takes f3. Black plays a4. White's 19th, knight to d4. Black, queen takes b2. And then we have the second diagram with the comment. Взглянув на диаграмму, нетрудно убедиться, что король черных остался без надлежащей охраны. Glancing at the diagram, it is not hard to realize, or to convince oneself, that black's king has remained without suitable protection. White's 20th move, knight takes c6. Black recaptures, knight takes c6. 21 for white, queen f5. g6 for black. And white's 22nd move, queen to f6. Если ферзь белых удобно расположился в непосредственной близости к неприятельскому королю, то его коллега может лишь сожалеть о том, что увлекся погоней за пешкой. If white's queen has handily placed itself in direct vicinity to the enemy king, then its colleague, now notice its, because the word fierz is masculine, but of course we would say probably her colleague. And коллега, colleague, perhaps better translated by opposite number. Then its opposite number can only regret the fact that it has been carried away by hunting for a pawn, or by pawn chasing. Black's 22nd move, rook to d7. Защищаясь от угрозы, 23, bishop takes g6, exclamation mark. Defending against the threat of 23, bishop takes g6. Karpov's 23rd move, bishop to f5, exclamation mark. And then a question. Может быть, этот блестящий ход ускользнул от внимания Ваганьяна? Possibly this superb move slipped away from the attention of Vaganyan. Well, some of these high-flown phrases again, it would be just better to say, possibly Vaganyan missed this superb move. Black's 23rd move is rook to e7, with the note, быстро проигрывала, well, I'll translate that straight away, quickly would lose, and then this variation, 23, g takes f. When white replies rook to d3, black plays f4, white plays queen takes f4, and black plays f5, 26, rook to g3, the check sign is missing, black replies rook to g7, white's move then, 27, rook on e to e3, and so on, e, tak dalej, etc. So that will be a losing variation for black. White's 24th move is rook takes e7, and the black recaptures knight takes e7. White's 25th, bishop to d3, exclamation mark. Black plays knight to f5. Можно было затянуть сопротивление путем 25, king f8. Rook to b1, exclamation mark. Queen to d2, exclamation mark. White's 27th in the variation, rook takes b7. Queen to e1, check not marked. White plays 28, king to h2. Black, queen to e6, exclamation mark. Не проходит. 27, queen h8, check, missed again. Met by knight to g8. 28, bishop takes g6. F takes g. 29, rook takes b7. Vidu, 29, for black, queen c1 check. 30, king to h2. Queen f4 check. 31, king to g1, queen f6. Оставаясь с лишней фигурой. Еще последовало. Well, there are two separate variations there, and the text goes. it was possible to prolong resistance by means of 25 king f8, finishing up with the 28th move for black, queen to e6. The second variation, не проходит, we've had that before, doesn't work, wouldn't work. So the variation beginning 27, queen h8 check, and so on, wouldn't work. In view of black going on his 29th move, queen c1 check, then queen f4 check, and finally finishing up queen f6, remaining with an extra piece, remaining a piece up. There still followed, and now they're just the bare moves of the game, 26, bishop takes f5, g takes f. White, rook to e1, met by queen takes a2. White plays queen takes h6, once again, a3 for black, 29, queen g5 check, king f8. White plays queen f6, king g8. White, queen takes f5. Black, queen to d2. White, rook to e7. Rook to f8. 33 for white, queen g4 check, king to h7. 34, rook e5, queen h6. Rook to h5, rook to a8. White's 36th, queen f5 check, exclamation mark, king g7, rook takes h6, king takes h6, 38 for white, queen f6 check, king h7, 39, queen takes f7 check, king to h8, 40 for white, queen takes b7. And the final note, последний контрольный ход лишил Вагняна и последней надежды. Теряется пешка А, поэтому черные сдались. The final control move deprived Vaganyan of his last hope. The A pawn is lost, therefore black resigns. Now on to our next feature, which is not so much a game, but another extract from the same magazine. You'll see it on the photocopy. Наше справочное бюро. With the word bureau split in two by a man looking slightly puzzled, a man in spectacles. I think we can recognize the last word as the French word office, and you'll see it works out as our enquiry office. So it's the question and answer column. We won't go through all the moves. You'll be able to work that out yourself. Just go through the Russian text. Open inverted commas. Как расценивается позиция, возникающая в шотландской партии после, then the moves, как может дальше сложиться борьба? На эти вопросы просит ответить Shodiev from Samarkandской области. How is assessed the position arising in the Scotch game after the moves, down to the seventh move? How can further develop the struggle? To these questions, Shodiev from the Samarkand Oblast asks us to reply. Приведенное на диаграмме положение, по мнению теоретиков, является примерно равным. Далее события могут развиваться так. The reproduced on the diagram position, well, obviously the position reproduced on the diagram, according to the opinion of theoreticians, is approximately equal. Further events can develop thus. And then they give the A, B, and C variations, but notice because of the alphabet, it's actually A, B, V. First one ends in the comment, И черные стоят не хуже, Tringov Stein, 1965. And black stands no worse. The second variation ends, Позиция черных не вызывает опасений. Black's position does not produce any fear, or is not a source of any worry. Third variation, more complicated. I think you'll be able to work out most of it. The only word, though, perhaps you won't recognize is on the fourth line, сомнительно, dubious, and the finishing comment is Так развивалась партия Цетлин-Геллер, 1971. У белых нет преимущества. Thus developed a game Cetlin against Geller in 1971. White has no advantage. And the second question. Есть такой вариант защиты каракан. Up to the sixth move. Могут ли черные здесь добиться равной игры? С таким вопросом обратился Лалиашвили. There is such a variation of the Caro-Can, which goes so and so. Can black here achieve an equal game? With such a question, addressed us Mr. Laliashvili, and then the diagram of that position. And the answer is, и без особого труда, поскольку перевод коня на G3 отнял много времени. And without particular bother, since the transfer of the knight to G3 has taken up much time. Проще всего, simplest of all, well, they're suggesting it's a simple answer, H6. Например, for example, and in the bracket there's the word встречалась, E, 9c takes D. There has also been met with, or there has also occurred the move 9cd, and so on. And the variation down to the end, it ends in black's 12th move, rook to c8, with the comment, у черных надежное положение. Black has a sound position. The next paragraph. Кроме 6h6, возможно и 6h5. Например, well, that's pretty obvious. Apart from 6h6, h5 is also possible. For example, and then a series of moves ending in 12. For white, bishop takes g6. Black knight takes g6. Так развивалась партия Бронштейн-Ботвинник, 1966. У черных нет трудностей. That is the way a game Bronstein-Botvinnik, 1966, developed. Black has no difficulties. Notice pronunciation, by the way, is the German form, pronounced st, Bronstein, not the way that we say it. Well, that concludes our more detailed examination of Russian texts. For those who wish to go further, I'd recommend you to try to learn the grammar that's been missed out from this introductory course. I could recommend you, moreover, to look at the more modern books published after 1960 are rather superior to the older ones. If you have a friend who knows the Slavonic language, that would help too. Remember the main point we made, that it's about 2 years before it all seems to go easier and more swimmingly for you. And it just remains for me to wish you all the best in your studies in Russian itself. Желаю вам всего хорошего в учебе.